He's trying to feed the kitten. Gotcha.
It's time to go.
It's time to go. All right.
Kittens.
Here we go.
PTZOptics presents Back to the Basics live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. A high-definition broadcast on Facebook, focusing on camera line tutorials with our Chief Screening Officer, Paul Richards, and our social media manager, Tess Protesto. Back to the Basics live. New videos every Wednesday.
Hello, everybody. Welcome and to Back to Basics.
This is Back to Basics with PTZOptics. I'm Tess Protesto.
And I'm Paul Richards. Thanks for being here. Today we are talking about HDMI extensions, HDMI transmitters, HDMI receivers, HDMI switches, HDMI switchers, matrices, and then of course it's all because so many of you are trying to power additional overflow monitors. So Tess, what is an overflow monitor?
Yeah, so this one for you today is just if you're looking to create more viewership space for your audience members, whether it's additional TVs outside the main presentation area, anything like that, right?
Yes.
I'm on the right
Exactly,
track
yes.
here.
So a classic example might be a church.
Music.
And let's see that, music, bop, got it off, thank you. Who was that this time? Thomas.
Guess who?
It was Thomas Hendricks this time.
I was wrong. I thought
Usually
it was
it's
going to be
Mike.
Mike.
Thank you, Thomas. Turned off the background music there. A classic example is a church. So there are people who might be getting older. They're in the backs of the pews. They can't quite see so well. And maybe throughout the large pew area or even out in the lobby, there's monitors that show full screen with cameras that are fully zoomed in, the preacher. And you can even have audio as well that kind of extends out.
We're also talking to those of you who support sporting events that maybe want to have TVs by the concession, or if you're in a corporate business environment in which you want to have televisions outside of wherever the presentation room is for that event. So today we're going to talk about some solutions for you to accommodate overflow spaces.
Yes, and so I wanted to dig right into showing you some really cool tech first. So I've got a bunch of tech in front of me here, and the first one I want to show is called an HDMI Equalizer. And here you go, hold that one, Tess. And then we've got two different cables. This is just back to basics, super basic stuff. An HDMI cable. You guys have seen this before. This is a really high quality one from Extron. It's 4K capable. And then, of course, you've seen Ethernet cables. Well, HDMI cables, and we have a little presentation, really most people will tell you only go up to 50 feet, okay? There are 100-foot HDMI cables. They can work with an equalizer. That's why they make cables over 50 feet, because what an equalizer does, and you can see here it has an HDMI input and an HDMI output. So at the end of a really long HDMI cable, what happens is that basically when it comes down to it, there's zeros and ones, right? That's what comes down to these cables. And when they get longer and longer and longer, there's an optical reader that might confuse a 0 for a 1. If that happens, signal dies because the whole chain is broken. So what happens is you can put these equalizers at the end of a 100-foot cable, and it's really got an amazing, really high quality reader, better than what might be in your television, for example, or especially a consumer television from Best Buy. So those are meant to have short HDMI cables that have a good signal. So this boosts the signal and makes it readable even at distances up to 100, even some people say 150, 200 feet with a nice equalizer and a good quality cable. And it all depends on the quality of the signal being sent as well.
Is this going to come from the camera?
This could come from one of our cameras.
Okay.
It could come from a computer, and we're going to show that as well.
So you could pull vMix or the switcher, whatever.
Yes, you can pull an output of your system. It could be one camera. It could be the whole produced output. And, there are certain things like a computer would have a really great HDMI signal out, but like maybe a cheap projector, might not have as good as an output through the cable, and that's where these equalizers are really good at boosting the signal. If you've already got an HDMI cable that's giving you a problem, these equalizers might actually fix the problem. So that was the first product I wanted to show, is the equalizer, of course, the HDMI cables. Now let me go to a quick presentation, and throughout the presentation, we'll show you the actual products in front of us to make sure that this is completely interactive. But this is our guide for HDMI extension, and you can download the guide. There's a link below on the YouTube channel. You can download this whole guide if you want to get it later. So you're seeing a picture here, and I think this is a great chance for me to show you a customer of ours. This is a church in Malone, New York, and they actually have confidence monitors set up that they power with a video production system. So this is very similar to what a lot of different people will be using. And you can see here that he's got a video production system, and he's got 2 monitors up there. I have to zoom out a little bit. I don't know why this is zoomed in too much. But you can see there's a monitor in the back, and there's 2 monitors in the front. And he can actually control what is on those 2 monitors, whether he's showing a PowerPoint presentation or a live camera. You'll see right here he'll switch different slides, different messages that you can share throughout your church or large building or space.
Okay.
So I just wanted to show that really quickly.
Ed says, in their church, we use HDMI over Ethernet and HDMI over coax. They work pretty well.
Yep, and we're going to go right into that in a second about some of the different options that are there. So overflow monitors are usually LCDs. They're almost always HDMI. So we can assume that we're talking about HDMI here, right? And we're not doing SDI to monitors. That's really high-end professional stuff. And we're not doing IP, Ethernet cables to monitors just yet, right? You can do some things, and we'll talk about it. So in a sense, what we're talking about is an HDMI cable plugging into a monitor, whether it's the camera, which supports HDMI, or a video production software like a TriCaster or a vMix.
Okay.
And we'll go into a little bit more depth in a little bit about how to use that HDMI output from your laptop to show something maybe other than your computer, maybe like an extended desktop or a multi-view. Now, the next thing we'll show is an HDMI distribution amplifier. And what this is this is a input-output device. So you can put you can have one input go to 2 devices. Okay, so does that make sense to us?
I think so.
So let's say you have 2 monitors, like actually was in the system we were just looking at, right? You see he has 2 monitors. So we might run one HDMI cable out to those 2 monitors.
So they'll have the same thing on.
And then split it.
Gotcha.
It's basically, it's kind of like a splitter, but they call them distribution
cute little space,
amplifiers.
by the way.
Isn't it?
It's
a cute little space.
Pallets. On a side note.
Let's see if I can find, here's my NDI camera. So I'm going to show you guys a little DA here. So here's our DA. And this is actually a 4-port DA. So this takes 1 HDMI input and outputs 4 HDMI outputs. So you can get 1 input to 2, 1 input to 4, 1 input to 8. I think you can even do 1 input to like 16 of these. So if you have multiple displays that you don't mind showing the exact same content,
that will work for
this will work great. Now the next one we'll show you, this is the opposite of a switch. This is, and I want to go back to my slide real quick. This is an HDMI switch. So what this does is this allows you to have multiple inputs, 1 output.
So what does that look like when it does get output?
So right now, and this is going to be a great live example, we have this camera, okay, right here, has HDMI coming out. That's input 1. Then we have your computer test. Here's your computer.
That's why you asked me to
with
plug
HDMI
that HDMI
2.
in.
And then 1 output plugging into the television.
So what they're seeing on the monitor here is just that.
And let's go ahead and show that. So now what you guys are seeing is right here on this button, I can switch between HDMI 1 and HDMI 2. That's our crazy live example today. Because the other products that I have here, for example, I don't actually have them plugged in. That's the one I have plugged in.
So this is so you can put different things on one monitor. Okay, I understand now.
So, and those are obviously, you can get IP controllable ones. They get really advanced, but we're just covering kind of the basics of HDMI extension. So, next is, so we talked about an HDMI distribution amplifier, an HDMI switch, and then the combination of both is called an Hdmi Matrix. And what that allows you to do is take any number of, so that's the motherload. That's any number of sources to any number of displays. So you could have this one going to that one and that one going to this one all at the same time. Or both going to 4.
But very useful.
So wanted to show that. Again, we're just kind of going over everything. And then now let's talk about, okay, so we talked about the DAs. We talked about...
pretty easily done. All you need is a bunch of HDMI cords and one of these switch boxes.
Yes. So this stuff is actually pretty easy.
And of course the TVs.
What's not as easy is extending the HDMI, right?
And why? Because the signal gets disturbed?
Yes, because once you get past 50 feet, the HDMI cables, the signals start to, remember the ones and the zeros start to
And that's what the equalizer is for.
And so the equalizer will help with that. Or we have the option to go over Ethernet, which I want to show these boxes. We'll go from
just
maybe
like Ed mentioned?
Just like Ed mentioned. And we'll show these from the top camera here. So this one is made from Atluna. And Atluna is a pretty good company with good prices. We have had some issues with Atluna. They're getting better. And let's show how this works. So this actually, I believe, has one HDMI in, one HDMI out, or 2 HDMI ins and a VGA in. So you can actually switch these. And then it all is transported via Ethernet. I like to just plug things in.
Which allows you to go further.
Which allows you to go up to 328 feet.
328 feet.
And
I
then
thought
hold
anything
this
over
one
100 foot with Ethernet.
with HDMI. And then this side has HDMI out at your display and Ethernet in. So these Ethernet cables can go 328 feet, 100 meters. That's what they say.
So why would you use 2? If you wanted to go 600 feet?
Well, no, there's 2 of them because one sends and one receives.
Oh, gotcha.
And the Ethernet goes in between. So that's the Ethernet. Now, the other cool little toy I have here is you can actually get these on a wall plate. So instead of having a box, you can actually install this just like kind of like an outlet on the wall. So you can have and this is nice for like spaces where you just want to plug right into the wall, have it a 6 or 8 foot HDMI coming in. And then the Ethernet actually is right here.
Oh, already installed within the wall.
In the wall.
Gotcha.
Now the nice thing about Ethernet, since you asked, Tess,
if you have to fish things through the ceiling, that's a good solution.
Is that, and yes, and it actually is to code. So a lot of places, when you're building a space, HDMI cables are really they're not really meant to be in the wall. They're not plenum rated. Plenum rated is a fire safety law.
Gotcha.
Now Ethernet cables can be what's called shielded and be plenum rated. So if you're doing it inside walls, it's safer for building safety to use Ethernet cables. And then one more little toy. Here's another one, but this is made by a company called Extron. And Extron is the most expensive of all of them. Still the same type of thing, HDMI, VGA, audio.
Is it just more aesthetically
Ethernet out. It just has
reliable?
It's more reliable.
Gotcha.
So they work like these. We never have failures here, and the receiver has Ethernet and HDMI. So
you would still need the receiver in this case?
Yep, you always need to set this transmitter and receiver. So always keeping an eye on HDMI.
Where can people get these bad boys? The Altunas. Oh no, this is Extron.
Extron and Atluna.
Altoona.
Altoona. Altoona is a city in Pennsylvania. But yeah, so that's some basics, and then we still have a couple more things I wanted to discuss. So we've talked about HDMI cables. We've talked about extending HDMI cables via Ethernet. There's also the ability to extend over fiber. And then there's the whole world of IP video that we've kind of touched on, right? And that allows you to span the globe with as long as you're on the same like local area network, you can attach to different videos all around the world.
I understand how that works with computers, but how does that work when you bring in an LCD monitor or whatnot? Well,
let's go ahead and we'll be in part of this presentation.
I swear we didn't plan these transitions.
Yeah. You're helping me out a lot here, Tess. And Step Back in TV is saying, is that HDMI over Ethernet box HD-based device? Video over Ethernet can go through a switch, or is it just HDMI over Ethernet cables, not switchable? This is not HD-based T, what we're showing you here. I actually am not even covering HD-based T in this, but HD-based T would be switchable, Ethernet source. So it's kind of like it's IP video. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk a little bit about IP video at the end of this presentation. I was going to cover the NewTek NDI, but HD-based T is very similar.
Okay.
So the thing that I quickly didn't touch on was the fact that basically HDMI cables 50 feet, Cat5 cables 328, fiber, which you can do basically the exact same thing as these boxes here, except instead of Cat5 they have fiber. And that can go 1,800 feet over single mode fiber. And then IP video, I put 3,000 feet there, but honestly, you can go even further than that, depending on the networks and how far they are apart. And usually if you're going miles and miles, it actually is fiber in between the buildings. So HDMI 50 feet. HDMI Equalizer. So this is just showing you guys just a little bit here how it's set up. So an HDMI Equalizer on either side of the HDMI to boost the signal, and you can just use a high quality HDMI up to like 100 feet roughly. You can do Ethernet, which is going to be 328 feet. We can do fiber up to 1,800. And now we can start talking about IP video. And this is something that's been really exciting for everyone. And one of the ways that we're going to show this today is, even though Tess and I are right next to each other here, Tess, if you can open up vMix, we'll bring in over the network the output of this computer into her computer. And we'll show her computer full screen. And you guys will be able to see a little bit of IP video live here. So IP video is basically the thought that you can have video transmitted in low latency, high quality over a local area network. So HDMI cables are obviously going to be the cheapest way to get your video from point A to point B. HDMI extenders are probably going to be the most reliable, easy way between 300 feet, which is going to fit most buildings. But from time to time, you may actually want to bring in video via...
Wait, can I press the button?
Yeah, go ahead and press the button.
Uh-oh, I pressed a random button.
There's only 2 buttons on there, so I don't think you could be too far off.
Oh, there we go.
So Tess just pushed... Let me see if I can get this.
Are you seeing the right
Tess
thing?
just pushed
let me go full screen.
the button there, and now you can see her monitor there. And
not letting me go.
one of the things we're going to show here is that Tess is actually bringing in... This is vMix over here. We have NDI enabled on our local area network. Tess, can you take us back a step so we can show this?
Yes.
So go ahead and close that and we'll open it back up. So what Tess is going to do is add an NDI input, taking the output of this. Of course, there's a lot of NDI cameras on here, but she's taking vMix output 1 and now displaying it live. And now right-click that video. I want to show this. Look at that. When you right-click it, you could hot switch, just like HD-based T, into all these other cameras if you just wanted to show maybe that camera or another camera. So that's how that works. And now what you want to do, Tess, is go minimize that, minimize that, and now right-click and go to Display Settings. And this is a Windows tutorial. And so see how it says display 1, 2? Mm-hmm. All right, it's just duplicating these displays. So that's fine. I couldn't go full screen? You could, why don't you go ahead? Yeah, that's why you couldn't go full screen. So go ahead and do extend these displays. And now what that's doing is now your output is going to be, and then hit keep changes. Now Tess's output to this HDMI. So if you hit full screen.
Yeah, but I did something weird.
Is it showing full? Yep, and now full screen is on that screen. So hopefully that's not too... I'm going to try to switch back to this here. That is IP video in a nutshell. We could talk about it for hours. We've already gone over our 20-minute limit. So we're going to go ahead and run the credits and answer questions in the chat. Hopefully
sounds great.
It was a pretty good tutorial.
This was really helpful for me today. Learned something new, which is great.
Oh. And we forgot our Facebook Live reaction
Thank you guys for watching today, and we'll see you in the pre-show. Post-show.
Post-show. And we're back.
I don't think we were muted.
No, we were muted for a second there. So here's our Facebook Live reaction question, a topic that's going to be on a lot of people's minds, and I'm going to try to walk you through this thought process here. HDMI, and that means HDMI cables, HDMI extenders, over Cat5, over fiber, switches, all of that, or IP video. What is easier for you? Now, the thing about IP video, even though it's so amazing, is that you do need a computer, right, to receive. Oh, HD-based T is not switchable. I'm sorry. It's not switchable. Andres is saving me there. HD-based T is not switchable. I didn't think it was either, but someone had said that in the chat. And they're saving us here. Depending on the devices at both ends, HD-based T is transmitted over category Cat5 cable up to 300 feet, 300 meters, or 100 meters, 328 feet. And there is also HD-based T that supports power over HD-based T, which is pretty nice. HD-based T, you can send HDMI, also network and control. Awesome. So yes, that's I apologize that HD-based T is not switchable.
There's a lot going on Facebook as well. Some great conversation.
What are the questions?
They're actually having a conversation. I want to make sure I get back to the actual question. No, you cannot use Ethernet. You can use Cat 5 and 6 cable. We were mixing terms up.
Oh.
The original question was that, but is that truly Ethernet? It's just a similar cable. Don't know.
And the thing that I was kind of...
It went over our heads now at this point.
Oh.
That one.
I think one of the things I was kind of getting at with IP video is, let's say you've got a monitor that you want to show any video you want on your network from anywhere in the world. It's really nice to be able to do that, but you do need a computer. These little microcomputers, Intel NUCs, are really, really nice. Let me see if I can switch to this and show it kind of close up. These little Intel NUCs, they're like 4x4 squares. This is an i5. And it's got one US. This is an older generation. They have a newer generation now. But Ethernet, HDMI, 2 display ports. So this little thing here, you could actually plug this in and actually power 3 monitors. So these little computers are actually extremely powerful. I actually wish I would have covered this in the presentation. If you're going to power 2 monitors, maybe even 3 with this little thing, yes, it is $700, $800 fully buffed out with Windows 10 and, you know, the hard drive and the RAM and everything included. But you're getting 2 monitors. You don't need to run any HDMI cabling. The only problem is you have to now manage a PC. You know, it's a computer. This is just you plug it in and it's on. With this, you're kind of managing a computer. It's got to be on your network. So it's a little bit different. But also, in many cases, still a good option. So you got to have your computer on. You got to manage it. Put LogMeIn software on here. Plug it into the network. It needs its own power supply. So it's not the best thing in the world, but it will work. I like, personally, HDMI cables. Everyone, though, is voting for IP video. So even
that's also our family here.
Even considering, but even considering the fact that you need a computer to receive it, you know, it's not like NDI is going to be built into televisions.
Right. True.
So just a thought. Getting one back. I got one back for HDMI.
It was a pity heart. Mike Trout says, one sender can send video to many, many receivers. You can also daisy chain gigabit switches.
Yes. And we didn't even get into daisy chaining gigabit switches or what a gigabit switch is or how to set up IP video. This was really supposed to be HDMI because I really do believe that HDMI extenders are still a great option for overflow because we're in that range of 100, maybe 200 feet max inside a building normally 90% of the time.
Yeah, it may not be, you know, too great a distance.
Not the hugest a distance. These things just frickin' work. You turn the TV on, you have it plugged in HDMI 1. You can send and receive whatever you want. Really quickly, I want to show one more little thing with my phone about choosing NDI sources.
Tom says, won't NDI solve the problem with needing a computer for a decoder? When will NDI have a decoder available for HDMI to NDI?
There is one available. There is an NDI decoder. It's called PTZOptics, P-I-Z-Z.
Pizzazz?
A-Z or something? Pizzazz. It's called P-I-Z-A-Z-Z. pizzazz. It's an Ethernet in, HDMI out for NDI. It does exist, but it's basically, and it is a little bit more than this, but it's basically this. That's what it is.
Oh, okay.
Basically, it's a computer because that's what it is. But they put a pretty face on it, and it is kind of a cool little thing. Now, Tess, let's go back to vMix really quickly.
NDI HDMI encoder.
When will New Tech have an NDI HDMI encoder? That I'll have to answer that question in a second here. Oh, could you close vMix? One of the things. Okay, we can just show it here.
Can I see my wedding pic?
Sorry. One of the things I wanted to show here in this full screen area here is this drop-down menu. So what this is doing is this is saying full screen. If I click full screen, basically, I don't have it set up properly, and I will show how. I can go to settings, and I can choose what my full screen is going to be. So I've got two full screens, full screen 1 and full screen 2. And I can say, all right, full screen 2, I want to be display 2. And that means when I click full screen over here, this is my display 2. So that's my HDMI 2 for my computer. That's full screen. But if I go over here and click this top button and go to display and say, all right, I want input 2 to be on HDMI 2 or on the full screen 2. But other cool thing, a lot of people use this. I want it to be a multi-view. And now I'm seeing, and this is great for live streaming and broadcast, if you've only got 2 monitors, 1 is your video production, monitor 2, HDMI 2 is a multi-view of your first 10 inputs. So you just pull the inputs that you want on your first, 1, 2, 3, 9, your first 9 inputs. So you can look at all of them that way. And that's a very popular layout, 2 and then 4 and 4. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing I'll show is you could just show preview on a monitor. You could just show your output on a monitor. And then remember that you can have 2 full screens on vMix. Other ones can have 3. So technically you could have your video production, your extra
so many Pauls.
Local monitor. Yeah, this is a little crazy. Your extra, we'll do multi-view. Your multi-view, and then on your next full screen. Yeah, sorry, I got overload on the Pauls on the screen here, because there's like 8 cameras. The next one could be your overflow video, right? So then you could still have your video production, still have your multi-view, and then your third HDMI out. That goes to your overflows. Maybe you extend it 300 feet away to the lobby with a Cat5 extender, and then maybe you split it with an HDMI DA. Maybe you split one HDMI coming all the way from your computer 300 feet away, and then split it to 4 more televisions. That's what hopefully you can take away from this. And a lot of churches, a lot of people that we work with are dealing with these questions. How do we distribute all of the HDMI to the different areas? And that's it. So that is pretty much the gist of what we were getting at today. And we're getting a lot of questions about it. So I think it was a helpful one. Next week, we are going to show how to install an outdoor camera enclosure. So that'll be a fun one too. And I'm actually really excited about that one. Live, I'm going to see if Tess can set up an outdoor camera enclosure in 7 minutes.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just kidding. We'll do 20 minutes. 20 minutes, set up camera, open the box, brand new camera, brand new outdoor enclosure, 20 minute show, open it all up, put it all together, screw it all up, then run outside.
Oh, we made it.
Oh, all right. Now, Tess, never mind.
What?
I want to I was going to do a live test maybe with this thing, but maybe not.
We're in the post show. You can be daring.
Well, if I wanted to enable audio on this.
That might sound funny, no?
Yeah, but I was going to go outside. I was going to go for a walk and show you guys the outdoor camera.
If you want, it's up to you.
That would be kind of funny. But you're going to have to watch and tell me how it sounds, okay?
Okay. All right, we're live testing. You're going to get to see the office outside of the studio, first time ever.
Enable that audio button
when you leave the room.
Switch to that when I leave the room. All right.
We'll see what happens here.
I really wanted to test this and see how it works.
All right.
All right, Tess, go ahead. All right, so now we are leaving the conference room. There's the conference room. We're leaving that area. and we're going to go out to the outdoor camera enclosure and see if it works. So I'm hoping this works. I'm going to go outside, and this should work. I've never done this before. I want to do a little live test here. Hey, Pat. All right, let's see if it works. Here we go. We're outside now. I don't know if this is going to work. There's the outdoor camera enclosure. So I know that our now a ladder here. So there and show camera. I don't know how well you guys can see that. There we go. A little shaky maybe.
There he is. He's getting buffering.
So that is, I'm going to show that on the show next week. I hope that came out okay. Just a little thought for next week. We'll do that. And I'm not sure how the audio, I just was wondering how good the audio would come through this iPhone. Just a little. There we are back in the studio. Did it work?
You're jumpy, but essentially it you know, you were there.
Okay, so that was a live test. We just wanted to give it a try.
It was jumpy, but we never tried it, so now we have. What are the okay?
I'll try that again next week
define.
with a different, with a higher speed setting, lower quality. I wasn't
Okay,
sure.
what Tom meant to ask is when will new tech come out with an NDI to HDMI decoder?
New Tech themselves have not come out with one, but a company called Pizzazz has come out with one. And I'll show it on the computer here. Pizzazz, HDMI, NDI. It's basically here it is. NDI to HDMI, $800, the price of an Intel NUC.
Bird Dog can do HDMI or SDI, right?
Bird Dog is HDMI SDI in. This is HDMI out. NDI to HDMI. NDI viewfinder for $5,000. God. So they're not cheap, but they do work. And I saw this working at NAB New York, NAB in Las Vegas. So it is legit, and they've got some really cool stuff. So it does work. So was it really bad, that NDI cam? I could have turned I couldn't tell. Could you hear me?
I couldn't. I could barely hear you. Mike had volume up slightly, so I could hardly hear if it was jumpy, audio wise.
John says your Wi-Fi leaves room for improvement. Yes. Well, I think what I should have done is had the settings on this baby. I should have had the speed all the way up. Hopefully that'll help next time. And how was the audio? I have no idea. I was wondering how the audio would turn out. Basically, I'm going to put a ladder out there for next show. So I'll just go up the ladder, show the camera, and go from there.
Are you on the guest network?
That's good. That's a good question. Look, you asking questions like that, Tess? No, I'm on the main network, so that should have been good. So that's our show today. Sometimes we do. Hopefully this wasn't boring. I did have to go through a lot of boxes to get all of this stuff out. You can see there's at least 20 different products.
I don't think this is boring.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was boring. I think we went through a lot of good stuff today. And
I guess that's it for today, folks.
Thank you so much for tuning in. As always,
and we'll
we're happy to have you. We will see you next time. Here we go. The audio was really very good. So the audio so we can definitely go out over that room or this room or yeah. So I want to do more of that. That was just a test. So
our building has metal outside.